This is Michael Waits, and welcome back to India GameChanger. We are joined today by Aditya Pandranki, the founder and the CEO of Doqfy. Aditya, thank you so much for coming to the show. Before we jump into the main parts of this conversation, let's get a little bit of your background for some context, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to introduce Doqfy. So, my name is Aditya Pandranki, and I'm the founder and CEO of Doqfy. So, the background I started my career with a sales background for the banks and NBFCs in India way back in 2001. I was a direct sales team member, and then I was working with companies like GE Money, Sundaram Home Finance, and Stan Chartered, and I was selling the banking products for the customers. And I eventually moved into the IT/ITES sector in 2005 and been there in the IT/ITES for more than 17 years. The last job role I was working with a company called IMS Health, where I was handling the APAC and EMEA project management. And during that career, I was actually pursuing my law as out of interest. I picked up uh, law as a subject and studied law. And post 2013, I think I moved into the entrepreneurial journey, tried building up some portfolios for the government sectors, and which couldn't pursue it further, and then eventually launched Document in 2019.
Okay, so Doqfy is not like a brand new company. 2019, that's a while ago. And what was I always think that like great companies get founded out of your own personal experience, right? Because this is how you know that there's like a real problem. Like, I wish somebody would fix this thing. And then you're like, why don't I fix it if I think it's a big enough idea?
So that's
What is the thing that, right? So, what is the thing that you figured out over this 17-year career of yours where you're like, somebody should fix this? What is that thing people should fix?
So when I was working in Bangalore, so this actually came up. This idea came up with my personal experience, as you actually nailed it out. So I was working in Bangalore. My father is in my hometown, Vishakhapatnam. It's a coastal India. So there's around like 1,500 kilometers distance. So I was working here, and he had a requirement of one loan documentation, where he was applying for a loan documentation for his home loan. And since he was not well, he called me up and then he asked me like, "Can you do this for me?" I said like, "Yeah, sure, I can do that for you." So I traveled from Bangalore to my hometown, and then I realized that after taking a week's time, I was able to complete that documentation. So the
Oh my
moment I can
God. Okay.
actually I can relate this thing, because since I started my career with banks and NBFCs doing the same thing for my customers,
Hmm.
and in 2013 I did that for my father, and things haven't changed. That actually triggered that actually triggered uh, uh, a bug, that why is that nobody's doing this? There's no digital journey for these customers, and then handle the documentation for them. Because India is vast, like you have 36 states and union territories, and you have state-wise stamping mechanisms which are very very manual in process.
Mm-mm.
So that's very typical problem where, and when it comes to the businesses, right, they have to manage different geographies, and then you have different rules across different states. Each state is a country within itself. So, and that's how like the idea came in. Yeah, that's how the idea came in, that let me create a platform for executing these contracts in a digital format. And we started leveraging the government portals, though they have government portals, like they have stamping mechanism, and created a simple platform which will help the customers to execute contracts in a seamless manner, which would take care of their regulatory compliances such as stamping. After that, they can send the document for digital signatures and then manage the contracts on the platforms. So yeah, that's how
I
the
want
actual
to
journey started.
I want to ask you this. I want to back up a little bit. Normally, a guy or a gal who's had like an 18-year corporate career doesn't just wake up one day and say, never mind, I'm just going to leave the comfort of corporate and go start a company just because my dad's filling out a
Yeah,
loan form. Do
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I get
What
it.
was yeah, so like what gave you the confidence or the idea of like, I'm just going to give everything up and I'm just going to go start my own company? Because that's hard work. Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought of starting the company immediately when I found this problem statement, because I came from the same background of initial my career was from the banking and NBFCs. There's a huge scope which is there, and then the system has not changed so far, right? So that has given me. If you look at the sectors like BFSI, banking and NBFCs and real estate, these are the biggest sectors in any economy. So at least like 70 to 80% of the documentation revolves around these particular entities. And at the same time, when I was working in the corporates, I've seen I was managing contracts for my service level agreements. I've seen contracts getting expired. There's a common problem at
Yeah.
enterprises, at businesses, at individual level. So when I was thought of doing this for individuals, like because I come from this background, I see that this is a business problem which a business has to solve. So another business has to solve for them. Right? That's when we triggered that. Okay, this is a common problem across the individuals, across the businesses, across professionals. But however, I picked up the problem statement for the businesses because the significance of these contracts is very very critical for the businesses. I have experienced by myself that where I've seen contracts getting expired, and we were penalized for those contracts, and then we ended up paying huge penalties for those contract expirations.
Yeah.
So that's how we triggered. It's a combination of both personal experience as well as the professional experience that I came across.
Got it. And how has the entrepreneurial journey been for you so far? Like, what do you think makes a great founder?
The journey is a roller coaster ride. So when we started,
You think?
it's really phenomenal journey, right? Initially, uh, nobody would believe you whether things will go in the right direction or not. So, and then gradually, when you set up some examples of the clients onboarding, and then you see that there's a significant problem statement here. That's where it's when you ask me like what makes a great founder, it's about having patience. It's not a 1 day job or a 1 month job or a 1 year job, right? So you have
Yeah.
to. It's a long game, right? It's you have to dedicate yourself for at least like 10 years, 15 years in this field to get there.
Can we talk about some of the challenges as well of because once you leave a big corporate organization, the normal clients, I think, for most startup companies, whether they think about this or not, is going to actually end up being those big businesses. And you know from being inside them that sometimes they don't necessarily move as fast as you want them to move, even internally. And one of the challenges that I faced is like, how do I even know who the right person is to talk to? Right? Because how do you deal with some of these big organizations and what have been some of the challenges to actually just get the right person inside to look at the product and then get that product inside of a big organization?
Yeah. So there's a clear ICP, right? Ideal customer profile for us when we started the business. Like we wanted to focus on one sector to start with. That's the BFSI, as
So
bank,
banking, financial
banking,
services,
financial
and insurance, yeah.
services, insurance services. So
Yeah.
we know that there's a huge problem there, and we know that who will handle that, right? So who will handle this? This usually the digital transformation heads are the ones who take up this challenge in an organization. Most of the processes are in the manual process. So we focus on these digital transformation heads. And the next ICP is the legal heads who handle this day in, day out contracts for the businesses. And the third ICP for us is the retail asset operations team managers who actually are on the ground to manage this in different geographies. So we picked up one industry and then we have gone inside that particular industry. Like we worked very, very closely with major banks, large corporates in this specific BFSI industry. And then we were able to give them the solution. So we understand every single step they are going through and we build the solutions for them in terms of getting things in a very seamless way. So most of these processes are manual processes. These are managed by manual processes, and it is scattered across different departments. A part of the documentation is handled by the contracts, or handled by the legal department. A part of the contracts are handled by the procurement team. Some are handled by the sales team. So all these things are in silos, but they don't have a centralized location to manage all these contracts. And The existing contract lifecycle management tools are very, very expensive. Not all the enterprises may have the CLM tools there in their systems, and they don't feel that okay, you want to put this into a CLM system where they want to do it in a centralized manner. So and the existing CLM systems are almost like enterprise focused businesses. They don't focus on the mid-size businesses as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we picked up both mid-sized businesses as well as enterprise businesses. Started focusing on BFSI, and then eventually started getting into other verticals, other industries, in the businesses. So when we picked up BFSI, like one department, we start with the retail assets. That's the loan departments that we start with. Eventually we know that there's a huge scope in the rest of the departments as well, so we started talking to the locker agreements team, we started talking to the bank guarantee teams, and there's escrow accounts, there's POS machines where they have the agreements, there's payment gateway channels where they do a lot of agreements. So eventually we were able to get into the we penetrate more inside in that specific customer segment. And later we have diversified into other verticals as well, like the logistics, transportation, manufacturing, other units as well.
So that's the thing, right? Like, I think it's hard to explain to people or for people to understand that, like, what a company like Dockify is building or has built and is selling to people is not just like the digitalization of a contract, right? This whole idea of contract lifecycle management is actually really complicated. From the original creation of the document, maybe from a template that exists, to modifying that document, to getting that document signed, to then having that document be alive over the term of some contract, and then also notifying people, I'm guessing, because I can think about it in my own life where,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
if I had known that this contract was going to expire, I would have done something and I didn't know. And you mentioned this earlier, but if you just kind of run through that whole process, it seems way more complicated than this. And it also seems to me that for SMEs and SMBs, and again, another topic we don't talk about
yeah,
nearly enough is that
right,
SMEs and SMBs, whether it's in India or Indonesia,
right,
run something like 80 to 80% of all businesses. And
absolutely,
for them to afford like really large scale corporate implementation software is just too expensive,
very, very
right?
expensive. Yes,
But they have the same problems from a documentation standpoint and from a contract standpoint. I presume you're working with them too. How, how does like how does all that interactivity work as well? And then is there a data privacy aspect to this? Is there a data storage aspect? Like, how do you handle all of these things that go along with the management of this? Because it's very complicated. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. So we provide Document provides a robust technology solution in contract management with a secure data encryption and storage. So we take care of creation of contract. So it starts with the creation of the contracts. There is a template library where you can bring your own contracts into the system, or you can create a contract from the base. So we will give a standard structure, and then, for example, there is a master services agreement that you want to create with one of your service providers. You can start doing that with just simply by picking up a template from there. After the template is created, you would want to negotiate the terms with the counterparts. So typically these negotiations happen so over phone calls or emails, and it would take ages to complete your negotiation cycles. Rather, you can do that on the platform itself, just like a Google document or a OneDrive document, where you can actually collaborate within the organization, outside the organization, and then you can actually put those comments into the system and get to an agreement that okay, I'm going with these comments and accepting these terms, and then you can send that for the signatures. So we have India has different signature types. You have I'm not sure everywhere. So we have different types of signature, as we have something called Aadhaar based signature. We have DAC token signatures. We have electronic signatures. We have biometric signatures. All these signatures are valid by the IT Act 2000 of India, and we have integrated these signature types because we don't know what is the kind of signature type the customer is going to use. So we have given all these provisions in the system itself to choose what type of signature you would like to use. If most of the banking or any other enterprise customers, they would want to use it with an Aadhaar based signature. So, but when it comes to a company, they would like to sign it with a DSC token signature, which comes in a pen drive kind of thing, and they can do that signature. Once the signature is done, you have to manage specific milestones. So there's services agreement that is there. You have specific guidelines. specific milestones. You want to understand whether the milestones are achieved or not achieved. So you can define the milestones in the system itself, that over the next period of time I'm going to achieve milestone one, or the next quarter I'm going to achieve milestone two. So they can actually clearly manage all these milestones. So once the milestones are there, so you can track it on time. If there is a payment related to that, you can release, or you want to hold the payments, you can hold that payments also. After that, you have to if few contracts are in maybe indefinite agreement, indefinite contracts, they want to renew it, they want to terminate it, and there's no way that if you want to do it in a manual way. So when they come to the Doqfy, they can actually do that in a real time basis. That they trigger notifications, proactive trigger notifications will go for the renewal or for the termination within the platform itself. And when it is coming to the storage and retrieval, the storage is happening in a specific S3 bucket specified only for that customer, and it is encrypted way. So we have different types of storages. Like if the customer would like to store the documents or the contracts on their own storage, we can do that on a cloud arrangement on their own cloud. We store it. The second option is that we will provide them a secure S3 bucket specific to them on our cloud. The third one is that if they want to do it on-prem solution, they want to store it in on-prem, we can do that also. So we have given all the provisions for the customers to do that. So we focus, as you said, like India alone has 30 million SMBs, and if you ask any of these SMBs where do you store your documents, they'll redirect me an admin team member.
A room over there.
Yeah, or
Yeah, that's
or
bad.
he'll redirect me to a staff who is actually handling it. And it's like everything is mandatory.
At home.
At
Yeah.
home, at office, bits and
Yeah, yeah.
pieces. You don't know where their contract is, and they can realize these, especially the SMBs, right? They have huge machineries when they have to do it, and these
Right,
machineries
right, right.
have AMCs, annual maintenance contracts, and they really don't know how to track these annual maintenance contracts. They have seen manufacturing units losing huge amounts in terms of paying that AMC because the AMC is expired. They have spent money, additional money. So Doqfy is providing, focusing on these use cases, the solution which is affordable, unlike in enterprise manner. We provide the solution for both enterprise, mid-size, SMB markets, irrespective of the sector or industry, with the BFSI, logistics, manufacturing, healthcare, pharma, real estate, ed tech, and many more. So that's the solution we have been providing.
Can I ask you about the regulatory? You mentioned this early, the regulatory environment, right? You said you do connect to some services inside the government that maybe control or that at least not enforce, what's the right word, that understand what the regulations are for any particular industry. If those regulations change, you have a dynamic relationship with them so that the documents themselves can then be compared to make sure that they are abiding by the regulations through the documentation, and that maybe it would trigger something that says we need to update this because the regulation has changed for something that we're working on.
Yeah. So when it comes to the regulation, it is about the stamping mechanism, which is very, very specific to India. Stamping is something is a kind of tax that the government collects from the customers. So whenever there is a change in the stamping calculations, so if you have to bring the legal binding of a contract in India, you have to execute a contract on a stamp and then append the document to the rest of the to the stamp paper. Then only it becomes legally binding. So we provide this solution with the help of government portals. When there is a change in the government portals, there is a dynamic change which happens in the calculations in the background. So the system will pick up the dynamic changes and update the stamp duty calculations accordingly, and pays according to the government regulatory requirement. So there's no change that is static or something like that. Customers can buy the stamping on the fly, and they can prepare the stamping.
Is there an Ethereum, and I did never even intended on asking about this, but is there an Ethereum smart contract aspect to this as well, and or does there need to be, right? In the sense that if something happens that gets notified, and then the contract just gets executed and money moves and stuff like that, is there an Ethereum aspect to this too?
So those are the milestones which are linked to that, but
Got it. Okay.
there's no regulatory effect on those
Yep.
milestone management.
Super interesting stuff. Um, this feels to me like it's part of this massive like digital transformation thing that's happening kind of across all industries, right? Is there a specific role that Docufy is playing in this digital transformation? And like how closely then do you start working with some of these companies, whether SMEs, SMBs, or even large corporates, to help them through this idea of digital transformation with them? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like Doqfy is actually is proud to be part of digital transformation. Like, so the entire work which was happening in a manual format, we were able to convert that into a digital format. For this, like post COVID, we are playing a very vital role in the digital transformation. Pre COVID, it was like we used to push the product to the customers. Like, do you want to use our platform for digitizing your contacts? A COVID actually changed the market equation and then boosted our growth. So we have been participating in digital transformation where we are able to convert a lot of documents into digital format. I'll give you a classic example. One of the largest, India's largest logistic player, like they have franchisees across the country in the remote areas as well, right? So earlier when we initially interacted with them, they were actually doing these franchisee renewal agreements in a manual format, where they used to send these documents to the customers, to their franchisee owners, and expecting them to send back the signed documents. So it was very mundane for them, and they were able to do only few hundreds of documents at that point of time when we initially interacted with them. And we understood the entire life cycle of this, the franchise renewal agreements for them. We understood there is an onboarding process for those franchisee owners. After the onboarding process, they'll sign up a document. Once they sign the document, they have to store this document in their repository. And yearly, there is a renewal of this document. So we have actually turned the entire contract, this manual format, into a digital format. And today, they execute more than 7,000 transactions on a monthly basis across India, where we have converted the entire flow, starting from their onboarding of the vendors, and then executing the contract for them, storing the contract for them, and then renewing the contract automatically. So that's a sort of digital transformation we have been bringing. And when it comes to the BFSI, like we have worked with one of the largest BFSI, like non-banking finance company, which is into lending personal loans, commercial loans. You have all sorts of loans, right? But they do not have a standard mechanism where they can actually do the accountability of stamp duty they're paying, their user management. That's one of the biggest tasks for them. Like their internal team members changing from one department to another department, and they have their budgets which are allocated to the specific team members. When
Right.
one team member is moving to another department, so they don't know what's happening to that particular allocation of the funds that have given to the stamping or the regulatory activity. So we have created a wallet system where they can actually manage on their own, and the user management is also given to them. They can do the user management, branch management as an organization. They can see how many contracts have been executed at a user level, at a branch level. So we have created a granular level information for them, where they're able to do that in a very seamless way, and they're able to get into that digital transmission.
There are so many topics to cover here. Um, if you're writing all these contracts or helping these companies write all these contracts, you must actually end up with a massive database of understanding about like what's happening in the granularly in the economy. Is there something for you as a company to learn from all of the business that you see getting done, even on an anonymized basis? And then here's where things get interesting to me. Because you know that and because you're already involved in some sort of legal process with them, right? Because you're writing documents and managing all their documents for them. You're creating it in an encrypted way, so they already trust you. Is there a way for Docufy at some point to turn into a fintech or an insurtech and then, do you know what I mean? And use all of these connections. If there's 30 million SMEs in India, now you're talking about the employment of what? 500 million people? Like, I don't know how many people work at every SME, but it's got to be 20, right? So now you have this massive opportunity to distribute other services to all of these people. Is this something you're thinking about as well?
Yeah, in a certain way that there is an opportunity to get into the fintech angle as well, right? Where we have payments. There are a lot of gig workers who they would like to execute contracts, and then there's a management of these gig workers and making the payment through the contracts. So usually when they sign up a contract with a gig worker, right, there's an opportunity for the contract creation over there. So once the contract is created, you need to make the payment to the gig worker after the task is completed. So there's a process to make the payment. So there's always like linked to the contract. So if the deliverables are happening, they can route the payment through Doqfy, and then they can do an escrow related payment through Doqfy itself. So that's the pipeline. We are in the direction.
But if that's the case, then from a distribution standpoint, there are so many opportunities for Docufy beyond just like the digitalization and digital transformation for documents and contract lifecycle management. Can I ask you this? Like, you've been at it since 2019. So if we were talking in 2019 or 2020, Docufy would have been a very small company with like 5 clients. I'm just making stuff up, right? But what if you're still doing it 5 years later? And this gets back to what we talked about before, right? If you have a real plan and a long term vision about what this is meant to be, 5 years later, if you're still doing it, you must be doing something right. Like, how many people are using the platform? How big is Docufy today in a way that people can understand? And then what does the future look like to you?
Awesome. So when we started in 2019, we were only three members, right? Two of the founders and one employee, right? So
Right.
we
I know
took
the
a
feeling.
we took a small 1 BHK home and then started the business. And then yeah, uh, we never thought that okay, we'll be doing this kind of digital transformation industry. And then definitely there was a vision that we want to create an online SaaS platform where you can disrupt the entire equation of the contract management. And eventually, people like the investors like Turbostar, Sylvan Detail, Pentathlon, Let's Venture, and Lead Angels, they have believed in us, and then they have invested into us, and then that has given us a boost up to create a massive uh, 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 process in place, and then we are able to scale the product. Today, when we started in 2019, we were working with, as you said, like we were working with a couple of clients at that point of time. We are a team of 55 members in the team, and then we manage more than 1,000 clients in our kitty, like starting from banking, I have logistics, transportation, healthcare, pharma, real estate, edtech, all these industries we have been covering. And yeah, ultimately, at least by 2030, we would like to onboard 1 million uh, businesses on Doqfy's platform. That's the future vision of Doqfy, where we can actually bring up contract management and contract lifecycle management as a tool for all these businesses, and accessible to, affordable to, robust, and and secure for them.
Yeah, I think there's a massive distribution opportunity here on the financial services side, which we can talk about offline. Because I do think that as you build this thing out, if you have 1,000 clients today and 1 million clients by 2030, I want to get back to this data and insights that we talked about earlier. Right now, if a customer that's not using Docufy is writing is writing contracts manually, they don't know anything about any individual contract any more than the guy or the gal that wrote it. But once they digitize everything, do you provide like what's the right word, analytics around what those contracts are, which part of their businesses are doing more contracts or less? Do you know, like all these analytics around the data that's embedded in all those contracts also could be just like another addition to the stuff that you offer. How does that look to you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have implemented AI for doing this. So manually we cannot do that, right? So we have implemented AI feature into the product, which could actually navigate the entire contract data for them. If they want to summarize contracts, they can do the summarization of contracts. Sometimes they would like to compare documents, like that when contracts are there, sometimes it comes in 800,000 pages, and they want to compare some documents. They can do that comparison of the contracts side by side, and they can actually pick up the differences. You don't need to go through the entire document. You can pick up the differences in each of these documents, and then sometimes they want to summarize the contract, 1,000 page document, into 1 page document to see that what actually is the summarization of this particular contract. So they can do that with the help of AI. And most of the times, when it goes for arbitration or litigation, the legal professions would like to extract a certain data from multiple documents, right? So they want to see what are the dates, what are the terms, and all those things, right? So they can actually extract relevant content which is required for that specific activity. So these are some AI features that we have built within the platform. It will also help them to do a lot of analytics based upon the type of contracts, the geographies where they're actually doing the entire analysis of the market, what kind of contracts or what type of the contracts they have been executing. So all this data is very available with the help of AI in the system, and we
That's
are
so cool.
yeah. So we are
I was going
also
to say that, I spent a lot of time talking to insurance companies and insurtechs, right? And that's why this idea keeps coming up to me. But one of the things that they're working on in their digital transformation journeys, right, is obviously trying to make it, and I want you to listen to two of these things, right, because I think they're both related, is they're trying to make their own external customer experience better, right? Like when a client deals with us, how can we automate things and make it sort of seamless and frictionless so that it's easy for them? The contract is the same thing. But one of the other things they're focusing on is how can we make our employees' job easier by employing the same kind of tools, but just like flipped upside down to do the other thing that needs to happen when it gets inside the company. So you talk about customer experience, but also employee experience. How do
absolutely
those two things work together, right? Because an internal employee doesn't want to write a contract. I know because I do it myself and it's terribly annoying and it scares me because if I write it wrong, I have unending problems, right? So sorry, I'm just wondering like how you look at the customer experience, but also the employee experience as well. And just thinking not just how much time do you save, but just how much better that job is because you have the help of artificial intelligence or just the whole platform. Yeah.
right. That's absolutely right. Most of the 60 to 70% of the this particular activity is handled by the paralegal or the operations team who does the like a junior level staffing who handles this. Right? So at the same time, it is very critical for them. So what we have done is that, especially for the lawyers, for CAs or CS, they have standard templates for their day to day jobs. So the standard templatization would actually eliminate at least 30 to 40% of their day-to-day jobs, and then it can actually automate a lot of things for them. And if they're doing it one x, then the turnaround time for them is that there is an improvement of 5x in terms of the turnaround time, and there is an operational efficiency. Around 70% of the operational efficiency can be managed with the help of Doqfy. Definitely it will help them because these are very standard structure. For example, if there is a board resolution and the CA, the partner in the CA firm would ask his junior to create a board resolution for a company A, and at the same time he is also asking to create a board resolution for a company B. So the junior staff would forget to change the company name while rolling out, or the company address, or it does not have a letterhead to create this. So as Document, we have created a platform where they can actually do these things automatically. They can create that letterheads and then address changes. Everything happens if there is a change that is there. The system would
Yeah.
actually proactively inform them that there's an error message. So you have to focus on this. So when they're doing it manually, it takes a lot of time for them and there's a chance of error for them. So when they're doing it in
Right.
Document, there's a very less chance of getting into these errors.
So one of the things you said earlier was when you first started the company was the two founders and one employee, and now there are 55 people working there. But you also said something interesting, and one of the reasons why I do this whole show, India Game Changers, because I want people not just inside of India to learn more and get more insights about what the business environment and how technology is changing the game in India, but so people externally can also understand, right? They can get a much better understanding from people on the ground like you. And I love this idea that there are 28 states and 8 territories, right? It's like 36 separate countries inside of one big country.
Absolutely.
And when I talk to founders in India, one of the things that they tell me is it really sets them up to be slightly more successful than other potential founders expanding overseas as well, because they're already dealing with like this government regulation and that government regulation and the culture and the food and the language and all these other differences just in the 28 states and territories in India, that just by simply, if you just want to deal with California and then go to New York, it's at least all English kind of thing. So do you expand outside of India as well with the knowledge that you've gained from just struggling through the expansion in India, if that makes sense?
Yeah, sure, Michael. As we have uh, initially, we were focusing, since last 5 years, we have built the product for the Indian businesses, and we were focusing on the Indian market. The growth is phenomenal. Today, we work with more than 1,000 plus customers in India, comprising of large enterprises and mid-sized companies. As a next step, when we have started interacting with the counterparts in ways, if you separate the stamping part alone, and the rest of the platform can be implemented in any of the geography that you would want to do it, right? So we have started interacting with the counterparts in Southeast Asia, UAE, and North American markets as a next step. So this is a global product offering that we are giving it as Doqfy as a CLM. We are doing it in our contract lifecycle management, and depending upon the region, for example, UAE is very specific. Like the
Yeah,
fastest growing economy for them is the property management or real estate. So we picked up the niche in the real estate environment, and then we have created a solution within the platform that is in the contract lifecycle management, and we are offering those services in this market, UAE. So it is definitely a global product, and focus is get into the Southeast Asia and UAE and North American market in the next 6 months to 1 year time period.
got it.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you've raised money from venture capitalists, so good for you there. Are you funding growth now out of income, or do you think you'll have to run into the possibility of raising more money to fund growth?
Oh, so for the last 2 years, we are cash positive. We are actually not burning any cash. So the revenues what we are making, we are able to spend that same revenues to grow the company. So we we don't need to raise the money to run the business, but we need the money to scale the business. Now we are in the growth phase. We are in the growth phase, and we are in the scaling stage, and we would like to raise the round only to scale up the product, the technology, and the global expansion in these markets. And a part of the money we'll utilize it for the research and the AI that we are building within the system. So we have been cash positive for the last 2 years. We are profitable, and we are of course we are planning to raise the next fund in the next 6 months to 1 year time period, only to scale the business.
Got it. Doesn't sound like you have any problems if you're cash flow positive and also making a
Yeah,
profit.
yeah.
It just makes me smile.
We're PAT
So that makes
positive
me happy.
plus. Yeah,
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. Like that's hard work. You know it.
yeah,
It's really hard to do. If you look at some of your other some of your other founders, they're still trying to get to the point where you are. So you must be doing something right, the whole team. Is there anything else you want to mention? And if people want to get in touch with you, maybe will you tell them how they can get in touch with you? And then I'll just thank you for doing this. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, Anybody can get touch with me through an email like aditya@doqfy.in or founders@doqfy.in. I'm very thankful for the opportunity that you have provided to introduce Doqfy to the global audience for this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, man.
Thanks a lot,
It's
Michael.
my pleasure. Aditya Pandranki, the founder and CEO of Doqfy. This was awesome. I learned a lot, and I think there's a massive possibility here. I love talking to founders that are building great companies. This was really super. Thank you again for doing this, man.
Thank you so much, Michael.